Hello, my name is Wes Fryer, and today is November the 13th, 2023. I am coming to you from Matthews, North Carolina. I am 52 years old. I am a middle school STEM teacher, and I have been taking, for the last 9 weeks, a course with my wife called Confronting Whiteness, a spiritual journey of reflection, conversation, and transformation. And this is a course that was created by Benjamin Boswell, and he is a pastor here at Myers Park Baptist Church here in Charlotte. And I have been wanting to share about this course and this experience for a while. And it is rather perilous to share about this because today, as I record this in the fall of 2023, merely mentioning racism or mentioning whiteness or mentioning just about anything that has to do with the racial history of the United States and North America or the world, it can be a very polarizing thing. And I really think that we need to be cultural healers and not cultural warriors. I think there is far too much polarization and vitriol and anger today in politics and in social media. And so I want to share a little bit about this. And the reason why we are taking this course is that our church, which is Caldwell Presbyterian Church, and I guess mention you can learn more about me if you Google my name. Specifically, if you're interested as far as my church background, you can go to wesfryer.com/theology. A number of years ago, as I was teaching adult Sunday school and sharing lessons, I felt like I needed to share a little bit about where I am theologically. So I'm an ordained Presbyterian, elder as well as deacon. I've been in the PCUSA church. I've been in the Eco church. I've left Eco and I've became an Episcopal for a while, and I'm back to the PCUSA church. My wife and I both grew up Presbyterian. And so anyway, our church is about a lot of things. It's about worshiping Jesus and following Christ, most importantly. But it's also about trying to address the affordable housing crisis that we have, helping people who are experiencing homelessness. It's about reaching out to our LGBTQ plus and our transgender brothers and sisters. But it's also about being anti-racist. And so in the spirit of wanting to learn more about what it means to confront racism and to understand where we are as a society and a culture and what I can do as an individual, as a teacher, and as a member of our society and our community, we've been taking this class. So what I'd like to do tonight is share 3 different things with you. Number 1, I'm going to share with you my current version of my racial autobiography. And this is something that Benjamin Boswell, the author of this course, encourages all participants to do. As we have met for 9 weeks, and this book that I've got the cover for here, you can order this book if you're interested. This is the participant's guide. There are readings for each week, and there are also videos and movies to watch. And I had read, in fact, I've got it out for tonight, different books by Dr. Martin Luther King, different essays that he wrote, different letters. But I had never read the writings of Malcolm X. And I'd also not read any of James Baldwin. And so both Baldwin and Malcolm X's writings figure prominently within the curriculum of this course, as well as other critical theorists. So anyway, I'm going to read you my racial autobiography as it currently stands. I'm going to share with you my definition of what whiteness is, which again is coming in the culmination of these 9 weeks of conversation. We've met every week for an hour and a half to discuss the readings and the videos and the movies that we've watched. And then I'm going to share with you a description of a project, which I've got the headline up here, or the domain, which I registered, which is healourculture.org. And this is a project that I've been motivated to start as a result of our studies in this course. So here we go. This is the current iteration in November of 2023 of my racial autobiography. And Benjamin Boswell encourages participants in this workshop to continue to work on the racial autobiography and to consider this a journey, not something that reaches a final ending point, but something that continues. So I was born into whiteness and white privilege, but those were not things I realized or recognized throughout most of my life. My father was in the Air Force, and our family lived in 5 states before I started the 6th grade. In 4th and 5th grade, we lived in Columbus, Mississippi, and that was the place where I think I started to think about race for the first time. If I had stayed in Lubbock, Texas for 4th grade, I would have been bused across town away from the neighborhood school that we lived by. I do remember my parents talking about that and their sentiment that this forced busing and displacement of students would not have been positive. Since I was born in 1970, I did not experience the civil rights movement of the 1960s or so many other things that led to a sense of cultural upheaval at that time. On the one hand, I am thankful, but I have wondered many times what happened to the civil rights movement, and especially the cultural desire to integrate our schools and more equitably fund schools so that everyone can have an outstanding public educational experience, regardless of their zip code or their neighborhood. It seemed to me, as a child of the 1970s, that the assassinations of President Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., and Robert Kennedy effectively killed the civil rights movement in our nation. And of course, I could add to that now the assassination of Malcolm X. I think I now have a bit more insight into those historical events and the continuation of the struggle to realize a more just and equitable society. When we moved to Columbus, Mississippi for 4th grade, my parents put me in a private school. They understood that the public schools in Mississippi were not great. And those were the only 2 years I attended private schools. I attended a private Catholic school for the first half of 4th grade and a private secular school, the Warden Carden School, for the last half of 4th grade and all of 5th grade. I had great educational experiences there, but I do not remember having any Black or African American classmates at those schools. At the time, and until very recently, I did not think about these dynamics through the lens of whiteness or white privilege. I did have a very memorable experience in Boy Scouting just before we left Mississippi. I remember attending a scout camporee, which was a big gathering of hundreds of scouts from different troops from all over our region. The rumor was that there was going to be a big fight between the Black Scouts and the White Scouts on Saturday night. Apparently, different scouts were making weapons, and the friend in my troop who I was hanging out with helped me fashion a wooden sword out of a long wooden stake. As far as I know, there was no violence or conflict that night, but it was definitely a singular experience to have. I remember that our scoutmaster heard about what we thought was happening and how we had created weapons. He threw my wooden sword in the fire to try and burn it. Later, I was able to salvage it and bring it home. That sharpened wooden stake, or wooden sword, made the move from Mississippi to Kansas and was kept around our house for a long time. The memory of its origin stayed with me, although I do not think I ever shared that with my parents. Before my 6th grade year, we moved to Manhattan, Kansas. We had just one high school in our city and had African American, Hispanic, Asian, and non-Hispanic students. As a percentage of our school population, African Americans were a big minority. I did not have any friends in high school who were Black. The most memorable encounter I had with issues of whiteness and race took place in my 12th grade senior English class. We had the opportunity to study different genres of literature, and I chose to read a series of books written by African American authors. The main one I read was Native Son by Richard Wright. I remember writing a paper about its naturalist philosophy. I recoiled against its contention that environmentally the main protagonist, Bigger, was deterministically shaped by his environment. The book portrays Bigger as a product of his environment. He murdered someone, but the message of the book was that he was not responsible for the murder because he was irreparably shaped by his environment. At that time, I had a fierce belief in free will, and so I rejected this naturalist approach to moral philosophy. My perceptions and opinions at the time were not, however, colored in any way, pun intended, by any relationships or friendships with people of color. I basically had zero ideas, experiences, or personal relationships which informed me about the ways in which race shaped and shapes reality for African Americans in Kansas and in the United States more broadly. When I was at the Air Force Academy from 1988 to 1992, I remember vividly that we had a Way of Life Club. In fact, I think it was the Way of Life Committee. This was a cadet organization for African American cadets. I do not think there were any white members, but there may have been. I remember thinking that it was a form of reverse racism, and that someone who tried to form an all-white club would definitely not be allowed to do so. I did not want to do so, but this struck me at the time as hypocritical. There were some black cadets in my squadron, and I was cordial with them, but none of them were part of my close friend group. It was not until I was in graduate school, working on my PhD, that I developed a close friendship with a classmate and colleague who is African American. He had obtained his bachelor's degree in California and his master's degree at Harvard. We became good friends, and he became a part of our family. We had him over to eat multiple times and enjoyed hanging out at different events together at the college and university. I gained a little insight into cultural differences for African Americans at the time, but my knowledge and understanding of whiteness remained very limited and shallow at that time. I lived in Lubbock, Texas from 1994 until 2006. One of the things I learned was that the current Martin Luther King Boulevard in Lubbock used to be named Quirt, and it was a north-south road that basically divided the eastern side of the city, the black side, from the white side. At one point, there apparently were laws on the books in Lubbock, as well as many other West Texas towns, that required African Americans to be, quote, on their side of the tracks by sunset. Towns which prohibited all blacks from staying inside city limits after dark were called sundown towns. When I became an elementary school teacher, the school district's Human Resources Department in Lubbock wanted to hire me to go directly into a predominantly African American school, which served many families experiencing high levels of poverty. I did not want to start my teaching career in that challenging situation, and I was able to get hired on at the same school where I had student taught, which was still a Title I school, but was more ethnically balanced among Hispanics, African Americans, and non-Hispanic students. One of my good friends from the Air Force Academy married a woman in Japan, and I remember thinking about race when I heard him describe the challenges for their son, who had to identify himself on multiple forms as either Caucasian or Asian Japanese. There wasn't a category for half white, half Japanese. He didn't fit into any of the racial categories. How many of us don't? I had several encounters with revisionist and progressive history as a graduate student in the College of Education, starting with my master's degree. I remember reading Jane Yolen's book, Encounter, which presents an alternative version of the encounter between the Spanish culture and the native cultures in the Americas than the perspective traditionally presented as the, quote, discovery of the Americas by Christopher Columbus. The book portrayed Columbus and the Spaniards which accompanied him as dirty, greedy, and certainly not heroic. I remember having a lot of cognitive dissonance about the presentation of North American and U.S. history, specifically as not aligning with the more mythological, traditional sort of history that victims of whiteness might think of students getting in U.S. schools. George Washington cutting down an apple tree and saying he would never tell a lie, Thomas Jefferson being a hero because he wrote the Declaration of Independence, overlooking his status as a slaveholder and father of children with at least one of his slaves, etc. I also encountered quite a bit of critical theory in my doctoral studies. I chose to take a semester course with my favorite Texas Tech professor, Doug Simpson, studying the pedagogy and educational philosophy of Paulo Freire, a Brazilian educator. Among other books, we read his The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and I was definitely exposed to critical theories which not only challenged traditional educational paradigms and teaching methods, but also our dominant Western, modern culture, which tends to marginalize and not empower the poor. I do not remember Freire's philosophy explicitly discussing and addressing whiteness, but it was definitely an anti-capitalist and anti-traditional education message. When our family moved to Oklahoma in 2006, I remember being surprised by the way in which blood and race seemed to matter in school. Students who were officially classified as Native Americans received special opportunities for instruction and enrichment in some cases. I think our Oklahoma public schools also received more federal education dollars based upon the percentage of enrolled students who were indigenous. I remember initially feeling like this was a step backward because it made race matter. I did not think or realize at the time that race mattered already in our state and culture in the ways that people treated each other. The start of that recognition would come later. I need to obfuscate the date and context for this next story because I do not want to invite negative consequences for anyone involved on my friend's side of this tale. But at one stage in my educational career, one of my good friends, who is an African American, was the victim of some rather unimaginable racist and discriminatory treatment by his employer because he raised a complaint about experiencing microaggressions in his workplace. This was an incredibly eye-opening experience for me, and also fairly disillusioning. I absolutely understood that my friend was experiencing this discriminatory and unwanted treatment because he was black. The way in which he described white supervisors, who I also thought I knew well, treating him was shocking to me. I realized there are huge differences in the ways that some people treat each other because of perceptions of race and racial differences. This course on confronting whiteness has been a catalyst for me to learn much more from authors like James Baldwin and Malcolm X about race and whiteness. This course has dramatically highlighted for me even more the desperate need we have for cultural healing in many ways. In the context of whiteness and racism, to me, cultural healing begins with seeking to understand our history as it can be and should be understood from different perspectives. I think it begins in listening, in study, in self-reflection, and in humility. I am a work in progress, and I hope I can continue to confront whiteness and better understand the roles I can play in our family, community, and world as a cultural healer rather than a culture warrior. And that is the end of my current racial autobiography as of today, November 13th, 2023. The second thing I'd like to share is just a short definition, which we were asked to write for what we consider whiteness to be. And again, this was written towards the end of this course. We talked about this and discussed this in week 8 last week. And this is what I wrote. What is whiteness? Whiteness is a vicious set of blinders which subject the wearer to a chronic inability to see the world as it truly is. The blinders of whiteness cause the wearers, subconsciously and consciously, to engage in a systemic habit of cultural othering. Through the distorted lenses of whiteness, African Americans and other people of color are seen as inherently scary, less worthy of love and human rights, less human. Whiteness debases and dehumanizes. It destroys and it wounds. It is evil. But thankfully, it is not, inevitably, the ultimate destiny for any of us. We have the power to uncover and see whiteness, and to work to eventually break and escape its bonds. Faith in the reality and power of Jesus' love is a powerful weapon for us to take up with both hands and our whole heart as we engage in this struggle to confront and defeat whiteness. Incidentally, I have started to read a fantastic book, and I've got this just under my notes, so it makes me think of it, by Heather Cox Richardson, which is called How the South Won the Civil War. And Richardson is an author that I think she has about 8 different books. And I would highly commend to you if you are interested in developing your own, I would say, sense of historical and cultural literacy around issues of race, but just also politics and culture in the United States. The last thing I want to share is a little, I guess I'll cover myself up there, a description of this project that I've really been motivated to create as a result of this project. And I'm calling this an inquiry project. I've been working on a project that I also call an inquiry project since 2019 called Conspiracies and Culture Wars. In fact, I'll be teaching a multi-week class starting in January of 2024 called, what is it called? Sifting for Media Literacy. I need to get the official full title here. I didn't get this up. You can find this. Well, shoot, I guess I could actually bring it up, couldn't I? So I have all of my resources related to media literacy on medialiteracy.westfriar.com. And you can scroll down here and you'll find this Conspiracies and Culture Wars project. So this is going to be called Sifting for Media Literacy Amidst Conspiracies and Culture Wars. And so if you're interested in more about that, you can actually, I was going to do this at the end, I guess. But if you go to my website, westfriar.com/after, there's a variety of different ways that you can get in touch with me. One of the best ways, actually, is probably just to sign up for my newsletter, which is a Substack on media literacy that I try to write weekly. Okay, so last thing to talk about. Let's read the description of Heal Our Culture. And this is just the present iteration of this. I think this is going to continue to change and evolve and might become a podcast before long. Heal Our Culture is an inquiry project by Dr. Wesley Fryer of Matthews, North Carolina. In multiple ways, we need to work together to heal our culture from the wounds and scars of the past, which include systemic racism, white supremacy, patriarchy, religious bigotry, and a variety of other discriminatory policies, attitudes, and behaviors. In addition, we need campaign finance reform, criminal justice reform, and healthcare reform. We need to end the widespread toxic worship of tactical firearms. We need to respect and celebrate diversity in all its forms, as well as cultivate resilient skills and dispositions as informed, savvy citizens of our communities, states, nation, and world. Overall, especially in the United States, we need to care for each other more and elevate the cultural values of love, kindness, respect, patience, gentleness, and listening. And so anyway, this is a website that I've started. Right now, it's just really a set of resources. And so if you go to healourculture.org, it will forward you to that resources page, which has a variety of books and videos and other things related to this project. So, I, of course, am hoping that the sharing of this video does not result in a lot of hate and anger being sent my way. I'm hopeful that the title of being a culture healer and not a culture warrior will resonate with some folks. We all have important calls on our lives. I believe this. And whether you are a Christian and a follower of Jesus, or you are somewhere else in your spirituality, we're all on a journey. And I think as human beings with finite minds, we're never going to completely understand the full extent of this amazing universe that we live in. But one thing that I do know is that we have the opportunity and the choice to decide the words that we share, the things that we share, the work that we engage in. And it is certainly possible for us with a great deal of humility to be learners and to be open to hearing the perspectives of other people, perspectives that perhaps we didn't grow up with, that are outside of our realm of experience and the bubble in which we currently live. We can be enriched by that, and we can experience relationships that really are beautiful and are wonderful. And that's a journey that I'm on. And so I want to commend the Confronting Whiteness course to you. It is available. We meet over Zoom, and there are many, many facilitators of this course. You do not have to live in Charlotte, North Carolina to take this course. And so, Google it. Google Confronting Whiteness by Benjamin Boswell. My contact information, I'll include some links in the description of this YouTube video. You can also just Google West Fryer. Matthews, North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, whatever. And I'd be happy to put you in touch with these resources. So blessings to you as you continue on in the journey of learning and hopefully service to our fellow brothers and sisters on this planet. And I hope that in some small way, the resources that I'm sharing here and the ideas that I'm sharing here are beneficial to you in that journey. Take care and blessings to you.